Well, we were just talking before we turned on the camera, this whole idea of guitars, you know, expanding your guitar universe or something like that. That sounded a lot better than what we were talking about.
Yeah.
But jumping into guitars that maybe you haven't given a chance, or, you know, this last year I've been on this quest of trying new guitar types and new brands and new construction, you know, methods that I've not tried. And you've done that, and you've actually gone like, you know, 20 steps
Super
beyond.
deep.
You've gone like off the rails in a couple ways. We talked about you getting Strandberg guitars, and then before that kind of getting into Telecasters, where you weren't necessarily anti-Tele, but maybe your circle was anti-Tele in a way.
Yeah.
And you know, so let's dive into this topic. We're just turning the camera on and kind of riffing. Every so often stuff comes up while we're building pickups, while we're talking. So let's jump in. Let's just see what comes out.
Yeah, well, the last thing I said before the camera was rolling was like, well, a collection isn't complete until you have one of everything, and that will enable you to be comfortable with any guitar. So you show up to a jam sesh, and oh, there's only a Les Paul, but you're a Tele guy. Well, you still know how to, you know, play on a Les Paul, and it's a completely different sound. But I think we definitely, once we find what is our sound, or what we think is our sound, we kind of stick to it and tend to kind of like, okay, I got it, I'm set. I don't need to look at other guitars, but you know, your sound can still be made on a guitar that you don't, you know, a hot pink Jackson Super Shredder Strat. You know, you'll still sound like you, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and it's kind of in that new territory. So if you've been following our channel, we're in the process, as of the recording of this video, is creating loaded pick guards for the Charvel Pro Mod guitars, and so that's one of the newer guitars that we've got in the shop. And we have a good friend who's been on several demos, Daniel, who he has several Pro Mod guitars. He's got a lot of them with the Goto, you know, kind of 2-point trims on it, but we got one with the Floyd, which was actually my first Floyd Rose guitar that I can remember.
Wow. Okay.
So that was a, you know, step in the Floyd Rose direction, step in the way different neck shape direction, even though it kind of looks and feels like a Strat. The neck definitely doesn't. So for me, it was kind of this, like, weirded me out at first. It shows up in the mail and I'm sitting there like, what am I doing? This is HSH, this is Floyd Rose. It's like this weird kind of flat D-shaped neck. It's kind of a carve that I'm not really used to. And it took me probably 3 sessions of sitting down to play it to appreciate what it is as a guitar. And I know so many people like those guitars, and so many people do amazing sounds. You know, seeing Guthrie Govan this fall kind of started me down the Charvel, you know, Charvel path, and I'm like, oh, you know, those are pretty cool. And and then Daniel having those and kind of bringing them in the shop. So it was interesting. I've kind of been on this like pseudo quest, like we mentioned before, but trying new things, trying new styles, like you mentioned, kind of jumping into Les Paul territory. We've had a bunch of Les Pauls kind of wandering through the shop the last, and neither of us are, I would say, are Les Paul guys in terms of our first choice. But every time we see one and play it, we're like, oh, I get why people like these.
Cool, yeah.
You know.
And that Charvel thing is cool because, you know, we've kind of come to the conclusion that you're kind of a Strat guy, and so see, but
I have been profiled.
You kept it where like you knew that nothing was going to be weird, and you weren't going to like not bond with a certain body contour or something. Yeah. But you did kind of like, you're like, oh, Floyd Rose and oh, HSH, and that's something we've had fun in the past with, but you don't see it too often. So you are kind of expanding your kind of like wheelhouse.
Maybe I'm like, maybe I'm going slower, like I'm taking more time. And I think that there's something to that with the fact that there's so many really affordable things. If you want to get into a Les Paul, or you want to get into a pointy shredder guitar or a 7-string guitar, there's some affordable options now where you don't have to necessarily go all the way down the rabbit hole. You can kind of like, you know, you can kind of like walk to the edge of the cliff. Yeah. But the one thing we were talking about too is that, you know, trying something of like the highest caliber. So I think it was a Sir Legacy. Is it Legacy? Yep. We tried one of those with a good friend of ours, and it was like the highest in Floyd Rose and EMGs and all sorts of stuff, and just kind of experiencing like the top shelf, and you're like, wow, that's really cool. I see why people, you know, love the stability of the Floyd Rose, and that's what it's marketed as. But sometimes the cheaper ones don't have that, so it's kind of going down those different paths. So I guess what we're encouraging you guys to do is just keep trying and experimenting. It's been a lot of fun this year. to just get into the weeds of all these weird guitar types and setups. And you know, for you, I think it was going headless, right? I mean, getting into, you have 2 Strandbergs now.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that first point of getting like past the, I mean, it sounded like you already wanted one, but kind of how did you even get to where you wanted one and then pulling the trigger? Because those are like, that's a lot of progression, I think, from where you may have been 3 years ago.
And each process is a little bit different, and I would even attribute that, like, this starting in like 2014 when they first started coming out, and I was just like so awestruck by like this headless guitar, and we all know Steinbergers, and those just kind of are what they are. They're like rectangles. You know, they're cool, they're awesome. They have a lot of cool features. But you know, the Strandbergs kind of took that concept and then gave it some zazz, some zip, some Tabasco. They put some Tabasco on it. And so from then on, I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. I'd like to try them. And then I tried one in like Rainbow Guitars in Tucson when I was living there. And I was like, okay, there's something to this. This isn't just, you know, like a gimmick or whatever. And then you just kind of kept it in the back of my mind. And so I guess it also was kind of a slow progression. And just once the opportunity was there, like once that green light was there, I just blasted right through that intersection. And yeah, I kind of haven't looked back. I've gotten really comfortable with it. You know, it is like weird at first. I did have an experience with an 8-string in the past before. And I remember it was fine practicing like at home, and you're like, all right, this is gonna be perfect. And I remember I tried playing one show with it, and I was like, oh, this is a completely different animal. So I had that experience, and I felt comfortable, you know, jumping into 8-string territory again. But I've also been comfortable with 7-string, so, you know, it's one of those things where I'm glad that I did it, and like knowing what I know about that guitar now and how easy it has made my life in some instances, I think it was a good thing. And like we had a need to track something in drop E. I know who needs to track it in drop E. But we needed it, and that I think it's a 28-inch scale on that on that E
so
string.
that helped you get there basically
without Flub City. We don't like that. So it was, you know, it made sense to me. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting, and I'd love to know, or we'd both love to know, just kind of what guitars are you maybe, I mean, it sounds weird to say you're scared to try, or you maybe have, like you mentioned too before we put the camera on, you kind of have this like bias that you kind of subconsciously develop, or maybe you consciously develop it over time, where you think, oh, those guitars suck, or those guitars are weird, and so maybe talk about some guitars that you're thinking of exploring, or talk, you know, put a story down in the comments. We love reading these type of things where it's like, man, you know, I jumped into the Jackson world or something, and now I love this type of guitar. And some people have jumped into like every possible branch really quickly, and then there's other people, I think probably more like you and I, where we've branched out but slower in a lot of cases, and then sometimes we go down that path and then we keep going down that path. So maybe what's your style of guitar purchasing, of trying new things, even horror stories? Maybe you went down a path and it was a bad decision. We'd still like to hear about that. I love kind of interacting with you on the comments. Thanks for those who have been subscribing to our channel recently. The channel's been starting to gain some momentum. We've been trying to get a couple videos out a week, which has been a lot given the fact that we're making stuff and shipping stuff and all that. But you guys have been great. Lots of good feedback and comments. We're gonna keep those coming. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't to our channel. And this is just a more turn on the mic and talk guitars, but just something we were thinking about. So let us know what you think below in the comments, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, so let's all go practice now.
Yes.